Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be highlighting 3 books that I've had the opportunity to read and finish in a relatively long period of time. I really kind of was in a prolonged reading slump for the longest time, so it was practically almost impossible for me between being in that respective slump and then finding things getting away from me in terms of how busy I was with work, and that I could not finish a lot of things. But thankfully, I've gotten mostly past that block in terms of things and found some books that I picked up, finished, really enjoyed. Some more than others, some not so much, but we'll kind of get into that in terms of the scope of this video. But I decided to pick 3 books that I was able to finish that I wanted to highlight in this respective video. The first one is one that I both read in physical form as well as audiobook form, and this is a book that so many people have talked about in terms of things, could not get enough of talking about it, and I've written a review about this on Goodreads in full if you're interested. I believe it's on my blog, I'm not 100% sure, but if it's not, then I'll definitely post that and give you all a link to be able to see it. But the very first book that I want to highlight is from Taylor Jenkins Reid. Carrie Soto is back, and as you can see, this is a library copy, and this is the cover for it, which I have mixed feelings about the cover. I think maybe the design could have been a little bit better, and I really did enjoy the book. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is essentially detailing the rise and fall of Carrie Soto, who is a fictional tennis player who essentially starts the book. This is taking place in the early part of the 90s or the latter part of the 80s, the early part of the 90s, where she has retired from her game, and she's watching a match with her father as her record is broken in terms of things, and she feels a certain type of way about it and decides, maybe I should go back into tennis to make sure that my record isn't broken in terms of things. And her father, who formerly was her coach, she asks him to coach her once again as she makes her comeback into the sport. And I'm usually skeptical of sports dramas like this, and because not all of them get it particularly right when it comes to detailing what an athlete goes through in terms of the mental, physical, and emotional toil it can take in terms of getting back into a sport you once played, even to the point from where you're at a specific starting point in your career, in the career of the athlete, and detailing that journey up to the point where they make their comeback, have some sort of return to form in terms of things. But I felt that Taylor Jenkins Reid did a phenomenal job of being able to get into Carrie Soto's head. It was not the easiest journey to be able to go through for this book, because Carrie Soto is a very difficult character to love in certain turns, and I've heard very many people say that Carrie Soto is that turned them off most of the book because of how brash and how forthright and how rude she can be in terms and cutthroat in terms of the spectrum of the game and how she plays it and that kind of thing. But I do appreciate when narratives can detail characters who are as flawed as Carrie in a way that feels realistic and still makes you want to follow them through the journey that they take within the respective story. And that was one of the things that I really liked about Carrie Soto is back. It is not my first Taylor Jenkins Reid, but it is the first book of Taylor Jenkins Reid that I am reviewing for both the channel as well as my blog. So I did want to be able to highlight this particular book as a good example of a fictional narrative that balances the sports aspects in terms of sports reporting, as well as the detailing of Carrie Soto's journey as a young athlete, highlighting some of where her mental game is, what her background, what her story is, her relationship with her father, things like that was all done very, very well, detailed very well narratively within the book in terms of things. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this as an audiobook as well in terms of things. So if you love dramatic readings and like multiple narrators and you really want to feel like an invested experience, I would recommend the audiobook if you can do it. But the overarching book itself was very well done. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely would recommend this. The other two books that I've read, one of them was a reread and the other one was a first time read, though unfortunately from an author that I really usually enjoy, but I didn't really enjoy that particular story. So what I'll do is I'll do the story that I didn't really enjoy from the author that I'm familiar with first. So I want to take a moment to highlight the second book that I was able to finish, which is a short story. I think it's a short story. It could be a novella. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong in saying that's a novella, where it should be a short story, I'll make an amendment. But I believe this is a novella from Megan Hart, who I said is one of my autobiography authors, who I've read for many years and whose works I typically love. And to be fair, I haven't loved all of Megan Hart's works in terms of things. Like, I can definitely say that I've given the full range of stars from 1 star to 5 star, or one, I think it was 1 star to 5 star in terms of some of the works that I've read from her. This one was 1.5 stars. And the story that I'm going to highlight is called The Challenge. And as you can see, this is the cover for this. This is actually the reworked cover from Chaos, which is a really cute cover, to be honest. Like, so I have it as an ebook, and I bought it quite some time ago, but I'm only just getting around to reading it now. But this respective story was quite, like, kind of like just missed the mark. Story of a couple who I believe is a gay man, alongside with his best friend and co-worker, who is a straight woman, and both of them are in different places in terms of their respective relationship. Yeah, reminder to self, bring your notes when you want to talk about a book. So for The Challenge, which is by Megan Hart, it highlights the story of the main characters, Katie and Dean. And so Katie is a straight woman who is essentially kind of like having a rocky relationship with the person that she is supposedly with in terms of things. And then also the other character is Dean, who is a gay man who is best friends with Katie and is having his own relationship, kind of like dynamic, being kind of on the fence and things like that. So what these two characters decide to do, which to me, I knew that this particular story was going to be messy based on the themes of it, but I would have hoped that it would have dealt with it in a way that was fair to both the characters that were involved in this story. Essentially, Katie and Dean, who are best friends and are also co-workers, put on this respective challenge, which stems from kind of a disagreement that they have in the spectrum of their relationships. They decide who can satisfy the other one first in terms of being able to, like, sexually please them and that kind of thing. So they identify as two different things in terms of where they are with their relationships and stuff like that. That premise didn't really make sense to me in terms of things. When you have like somebody that you're comfortable around in terms of things, like you're interested in trying different things and stuff like that, that can be a healthy dynamic in a relationship between like people. But for me, like in terms of how the story decided to do Katie and Dean's relationship, it didn't feel like it treated both of the characters with the amount of respect they deserved, because it felt like this respective story was framed in a way that it was centered more on Katie's satisfaction and Katie's dissatisfaction with her current relationship, and being able to be fulfilled and satisfied by Dean's actions. Whereas Dean, in terms of his relationship, he seemed to be having like a pretty close relationship, if a little bit rocky relationship, with his boyfriend. So it felt like, in some manners, it felt like Katie was using Dean to get her satisfaction, whereas Dean was kind of left feeling with some degrees of regret at being able to do this challenge. They did the challenge. It was very piping hot, steamy sensual scenes between the two of them, but I didn't feel like it treated both of the characters with the amount of respect that they deserved in terms of that, of how they identified in their respective relationships and things like that. I was frustrated with how it chose to portray those things. So I gave this, since it did seem to feel like it didn't delve into some of the dynamics of that relationship and things that were kind of just glossed over for the sake of championing one of those relationships over the other, I gave this 1.5 stars. I thought the writing was well done, but I felt like it missed the mark in terms of the way that it chose to treat these characters in terms of things. And it, for me, it just didn't feel like, I didn't feel like it did a really necessarily a good job of being able to portray these characters in the way that they could have been portrayed. So I'll leave it at that. This was originally released, I believe, as a standalone story. It was included in the 12 Shades of Surrender anthology, if I can remember the line of Harlequin that it was published under. It was under Spice Briefs, and this is the original cover for that, for your reference. But I wish that it could have been a better story for what it was in terms of things. She's definitely written better, shorter novellas in terms of things, so I would definitely recommend other stories aside from this one. But unfortunately, this one was just disappointing to me as presented. So the third book that I want to highlight is a classic YA, I would call it a suspense thriller, a survival thriller that basically shaped a lot of people's reading experiences. And I know it shaped mine. It's one of my favorite books, even though I recognize some of the flaws with it. I first read this particular book when I was in 7th grade, so I was probably around 12 years old when I first read this. And ever since I read it, I feel like it's shaped kind of like what my perception of the like survival thriller, like, and it's got me more into that particular genre. It's also one of the few YA titles where both of the characters, both of the primary characters who are in the work, are older than teenagers. And some of you may know the book that I'm referring to. It was made into a movie twice. One of the movies that was made into was one that was featured back in the 70s, starred Andy Griffith, and it was called Savages. The updated version, I believe, is starring Michael Douglas, and I'm trying to remember the name of the title of that. It was called Beyond the Reach. So Beyond the Reach and Savages, Savages was with Andy Griffith and was made in the 70s. Beyond the Reach was made in 2014 and stars Michael Douglas. Both of these movies are adaptations of the book that I'm going to name right now, which is considered a classic in YA literature, Deathwatch by Rob White. And so Deathwatch by Rob White, I have read this book several times, and every single time I get a little bit of a different experience out of it, and a better appreciation of how this book has not only shaped my reading and writing, but also kind of shaped the genre in terms of what it is included in. But Deathwatch is a story of a young adult named Ben, who is 22, college student who is going on a hunting expedition with Maddox. Essentially, these two are polar opposites in terms of everything that they do. Ben is a bit naive, but he has a good heart and is interested in doing the right thing. Maddox is basically the polar opposite. He is manipulative and very wealthy, doesn't really care about things and that kind of thing. But these two polar opposite people are going on a hunting expedition. And as they go on this expedition, they realize there is a dead man who was accidentally shot. Ben decides to say, hey, okay, so I think we should take this body back to town and be able to get report it as an accident. Maddox does not want that to happen. And so the two of them kind of fight it out. And I really appreciate it in terms of Ben's personality, because he basically tells Maddox, no, I'm not going to listen to you try to work your way out of this. This is an accident. We have to take the body back. That's all there is to it. Whereas Maddox is trying to kind of lie his way out of it, trying to bribe Ben, do all these kinds of different things to coerce Ben to leave the body and just say go. But that doesn't happen. And then when Maddox realizes that he can't convince Ben, he decides to pull his gun on Ben, makes Ben strip down to his underpants and basically run around the desert and deprive him of food, of water, of any kind of reprieve by basically aiming the gun at him. And I will be waiting here with this gun until you die in the desert. That's essentially what he does for most of the book. And poor Ben has to use his wits about him in order to be able to survive the desert. And it's brutal, it's brutal to see what Maddox does to Ben, and how Ben has to do what he can to be able to survive. Just the harrowingness of it really sticks with you in terms of what Ben has to do to survive and what he has to do to turn the tables on Maddox, and it ultimately march to the novel's conclusion. I'm not going to spoil it in this video in terms of, in case you want to be able to read it and you haven't read it yet, but it does a very good job of getting into the minds and the actions of these characters in terms of showcasing the differences between Ben and Maddox in this fight for survival. So I definitely appreciated being able to reread it after a number of years. In terms of things, I really enjoyed it. I think probably one of the factors about this book that really kind of detracted from it a little bit is the fact that there were parts of the book that did slow down for pacing, that included details that weren't necessarily relevant to the survival plot. The survival bits were done very well. The tension between the two characters were done very well. But I think there were certain stretches where it felt like it drew out the narrative a little bit more than it should have been. But I thought that it was still well done for execution for both the story, the characterization, and the overarching themes and narrative overall. So I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my favorites. It's one book that has influenced me in terms of my reading as well as my writing, and I really like the aspect of being able to come back to it and revisit it for another time. So that is it for 3 books in this respective video that I wanted to highlight. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week.